You're listening to episode number 26 of the Keto Diet Podcast. Today we're chatting about juggling a household of non-keto family members, how to manage picky eaters, intermittent fasting, and your family, and more. So stay tuned. Hey, I'm Leanne from healthfulpursuit.com, and this is the Keto Diet Podcast, where we're busting through the restrictive mentality of a traditional ketogenic diet to uncover the life you crave. What's keto? Keto is a low-carb, high-fat diet where we're switching from a sugar-burning state to becoming fat-burning machines. If you're in need of keto recipe food prep inspiration, I've prepped a free 7-day keto meal plan exclusive for podcast listeners. The plan is complete with a shopping list and everything you need to chow down on keto for 7 whole days. Download your free copy at healthfulpursuit.com/keto meal. Let's get this party started. Hey guys, I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. March 26th, can't even believe it's happening. And in fact, I just realized it's March 26th and it's episode 26. I think we're in the Twilight Zone. I don't even remember what that song was for the Twilight Zone. I don't even know if I ever watched it. I think my parents just talked about it. Anyway, the show notes and full transcript for today's episode can be found at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E26. And the transcript is added to the post about 3 to 5 days following the initial air date of this episode. Let's hear from one of our awesome partners. The show is partnered up with Paleo Valley, the makers of the only 100% grass-fed and finished fermented beef stick. Each stick contains 1 billion probiotic CFUs. We all know how important fermented foods are to the health of our gut and the strength of our immune system, especially during cold and flu season, as well as boosting our energy throughout the winter months. Chowing down on Paleo Valley's fermented beef sticks provides your body with all of the beneficial bacteria it loves in one convenient little beef stick. Their gut-friendly sticks are gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, freaky chemical additive, dye, and preservative-free, as well as being 100% free from carbs and sugar, and made with the highest quality ingredients. Exclusive to listeners of the show, receive instant savings of 20% off Paleo Valley fermented beef stick snacks by going to paleovalley.com/keto. And if your jaw is just tired thinking about beef jerky, it's worth noting that these tasty treats are not tough at all, but moist with a little snap. The summer sausage flavor even tastes like those hickory summer sausages, but without the gunk. Seriously delicious. Again, that's paleovalley.com/keto for an instant 20% off savings. We got 2 announcements this week. The first one is that my book tour, starting in April 11th, 12th-ish, has been finalized. So I'll be going to Atlanta, Houston, Austin, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver, BC, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto. And there is one date that we're still trying to figure out. I'm recording this episode a couple of days before, so hopefully we figured it out. Montreal is still pending. We've had to remove New York from the tour schedule. We just couldn't get things lined up, unfortunately. So if you are in the New York area and you were looking forward to the event, I am so sorry that we couldn't get it figured out. It's kind of out of my hands. I just put together a list of all the places I'd like to go, and we had to just pick from what was available and what bookstores wanted to coordinate things. And there's a lot of moving parts. So know that if we are not meeting on the book tour, I'm sure we will in the future. If you can't make it to any of the other locations, I'm going to be stopping through a bunch of places in Canada and the US during the summer, signing books and just leaving them in stores. So if you follow me on Instagram, Healthful Pursuit, definitely watch for that in the summer. And if you decide to join up on the tour, you can still RSVP for all of the locations by going to ketodietbook.com/tour. tour. I'm especially excited for the Calgary event. It's going to be quite epic. We're doing a book launch and they're going to be making a bunch of different recipes from the book. And then I'm going to be doing about an hour-long talk afterwards. So this is the only location where I'll be doing a talk, and we're going to be airing it across all of the stores in Calgary. So if you can't make it to the downtown Calgary location, you can always join up at the Chinook location or the Northwest location and watch me like a webinar from that location. So really cool stuff happening. And the second quick announcement that I just wanted to share with you is that we're working to create a bunch of different and new content for the podcast. It's going to kind of take hold about in September or so. So what I would love for you to do is to go to healthfulpursuit.com/survey and answer a couple of questions. It'll take about 2 minutes to fill out this quick survey on what you're struggling with so that you can help me create content that will help you. So all you got to do is fill out that survey. It gets sent to me. And when you fill it out, you'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Again, that's healthfulpursuit.com/survey. And the link will also be in the show notes. If you have an idea for a podcast episode or you want to submit praise over and above your review, which you can leave by going to healthfulpursuit.com/review, you can reach me at info@ketodietpodcast.com. And those reviews really help, and they help more people find the show. And with everything that's going on with keto right now, it's really cool to have a woman's voice in the whole realm, because I know when I was first starting off with keto, there weren't a lot of women talking about it. And it was just frustrating for me to not hear about it from a woman's perspective. And there are certain things that we struggle with that are more part of being a woman. And definitely I want all the men listening to know that I definitely love sharing information for men, directed for them. It's just sometimes like a girl's gotta know what a girl's gotta know. We got a lot of good questions for today's guest. Questions and suggestions on guests were submitted by members of our private Facebook group, which is accessible to everyone who purchases one of my keto products, which are available at healthfulpursuit.com/shop. So today's guest, her name is Katie, and she's a working mom of 4, 2 boys, 2 girls, ages 20, 14, 4, and 3. Her husband stays at home with their 2 little ones, while Katie works her corporate job 45 minutes away from home. Katie enjoys her job as a training manager, but her real passion is nutrition and exercise. She learned to cook at a young age, where she won awards demonstrating how to cook delectables such as meatloaf, apple crisp at the local state level 4-H events. She's been an avid exerciser since she was 12 years old. She's dabbled in long distance running in the past, but mostly enjoys weight training, walking, yoga, and dance. Her dream is to someday become a nutritionist, but until then, she continues to listen to keto and paleo podcasts during her commute to and from work and read as much as possible. After finding paleo and keto over 18 months ago, Katie has resolved 20 years of chronic heartburn and chronic fatigue, with the added benefit of finally losing the last 10 pounds from her last baby and staying very healthy and medication free. If you didn't pick up on the reference to 4-H, Katie lives in the Midwestern United States, the mecca of the standard American diet. She's used to being the weird one when it comes to eating with her friends and family. While her local grocery store carries a few specialty paleo and keto options, she lives over 2 hours from a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. And so she makes do with being creative, shopping farmers markets, and orders a lot from the internet. So I'm really excited to have Katie on the show. We chatted about family and how to balance family with taking care of yourself, how eating keto has helped her as a mom, and really just how to juggle life and also be a mother and a parent even. So let's jump over to this awesome interview. Hey Katie, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Leanne?
I'm so good. I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast. As everyone knows, I love these keto experience things because it's like so rare that we get to listen to podcasts of like regular people, So I'm really happy to have you on the show. And why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your life and what's going on?
Okay. So my name's Katie Williams, and I live in the Midwest United States. And I grew up here with the exception of being an exchange student in college. And my parents lived in Montana for a couple years while I was in college. But for the most part, I have lived in this area, born and bred. The city I'm from is called Peoria, Illinois. And I did not grow up on a farm, but in a smaller town, but I was involved in 4-H, and that is kind of where I started with my interest in food and cooking. I did food demonstrations and actually won for the state. I think I was maybe 12 years old, made a meatloaf. So won some money, and that's really where I kind of learned to cook. And my mom was always a cook, a big cook, and we had a lot of homemade meals and all that. And then when I was 22, I had my oldest son. And when I was pregnant with him, I developed horrible heartburn. And that was really, up until then, I'd had no health issues, very active, started working out when I was like 12 years old, and pretty much could eat whatever I wanted. I was very skinny. But when I was pregnant with him, I started having some health issues. So started with the heartburn. I could not drink water without getting heartburn.
Oh my
I
gosh.
ate Tums, the maximum amount of Tums as I could. So this was back in 1996. So I wasn't interested in really getting on a medication, but maybe I should have. Don't know. But since I had him, after I had him, I continued to have chronic heartburn. After I gave birth to him and was still having problems, I did start taking over-the-counter antacids, which did help. However, I took them for 20 years nonstop, except for when I was pregnant with my other 3 children. So I have now 20-year-olds, and then I have a 14-year-old, and then a almost 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So with the exception of during those pregnancies, I took over-the-counter medication for heartburn. And then probably 2 years ago or so, I started learning more about paleo, and I've always kind of been a hippie at heart and not really interested in a lot of medication. And I've evolved really since then, and really focusing on some possible food sensitivities and trying to figure that out. And it helped. I stopped taking over-the-counter antacids in October of 2015, and proud to say I've not taken any since then. It was kind of a process, though, to get to that point, and have since realized that I have a sensitivity to gluten and possibly dairy. I'm kind of figuring that one out right now. But about probably 7 months ago, I started hearing about keto. And one other issue that I'd had, which I didn't really try to figure out, was I have hypoglycemia. And I had it since I was little, but I didn't have it a lot. It really only happened on the weekends. So I'm not sure about that, but
Interesting.
yeah, it was weird, but I never knew what it was until a couple years ago. I just knew I didn't feel very well if I ate a really high carbohydrate breakfast, and I'd get really sluggish and just didn't feel well. So I married a type 1 diabetic 6 years ago, and one time I was just feeling not so great after I'd had some carbs in the morning, and I took my blood sugar because he has a monitor here, and my blood sugar was like 60 or something. So I started kind of testing my blood sugar more and realized that I had it's called a reactive hypoglycemia. So that really, when I started hearing about keto, I first reacted because I was very familiar with ketoacidosis, being married to a type 1 diabetic. And I was like, oh, no, not doing that. That's bad. I don't want to be in the hospital. But then I learned more about what keto is and that it's not ketoacidosis. And So I have been focusing on keto since probably April or May. And I heard about you pretty quickly after I started hearing about keto and learning about it from Jimmy Moore. So I started kind of listening to your podcasts, Leanne, and Jimmy Moore's. I'm kind of a podcast addict. I think I subscribe to 75 podcasts.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I listen to them constantly. Yes, I love them. And really started focusing on that hypoglycemia because along with the hypoglycemia, I have been kind of struggling with anxiety and panic attacks and some memory issues, I guess. So that's kind of been my focus for the last 6 months, is trying to find my right balance with keto. I definitely feel a lot better eating keto and a higher fat, and just trying to kind of stay consistent and continue to work on it, because being married to a diabetic, but also living in a place that we don't have Whole Foods. My nearest Whole Foods is 2.5 hours away, and Trader Joe's is 2.5 hours away. So I have to order a lot on Amazon, but just being in this environment, I am tempted all the time. And I know everybody's tempted all the time, but I've really had some challenges trying to eat this way consistently. So
what sort of challenges have you had? Like, you talked a little bit about grocery accessibility. How many of your children are still living at home? Because I'm sure that's a challenge too, depending on how they eat, right?
Yeah, so my oldest lives on his own, and then my other 3 live at home. So they're all very different ages. So my 14-year-old, my approach with all of them has been to not force it down their throat. My husband especially, because he became a type 1 diabetic actually 6 years ago. So the man is the last person on earth who should be a type 1 diabetic. He loves carbs, loves donuts, cake, everything bad carbs. So he's also, it's been a real challenge with him because he has had to completely change. He's supposed to eat better, I guess I should say, but he really struggles with that because his whole life basically got turned upside down when he became type 1 diabetic. So he struggles with his A1C, and he likes to eat carbs. And so I'm trying to live by example and really cook in a way that he knows he can add what he wants. If he wants to add a dinner roll or have a bowl of cereal, I'm not going to say anything to him necessarily. I want him to see and hear about what has worked for me and to hopefully help him along. So he also likes meat and fat. So that helps, except he's also eating carbs, which is not good. So I try to vocalize with him, hey, I woke up this morning and I feel great and my blood sugar is 70 and I haven't had any carbs. And with my energy level too, I was really struggling with energy a couple years ago and just having really bad fatigue. And I'll say, I just feel so good today and I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to do these things. And just so he just kind of sees what my approach is and hopefully will ask me questions.
Yeah, and kind of follow in your path. I totally understand what you're saying. It's like when I started meditating and doing yoga and stuff, instead of pushing people and being like, oh, babe, you got to try this, you got to do it. I just started looking more calm and dealing with situations a little bit better. And then Kevin was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Tell me more. Yeah. And that's kind of how you get people hooked without going crazy. Because could you imagine if you were pushing this down people's throats and they were getting frustrated with you, and that doesn't improve your living situation. That makes things worse. So I think that's an amazing way of going about it, of just, I'm going to do me. And when I start to, function a little bit differently and I'm in a better mood, people will ask me, what are you doing? What's your secret? And then you can tell them, they kind of open up the door for you. So that's really good. So how do you balance cooking for the family, like all the different meals. How do you do that? What's your strategy?
So I meal prep a lot on the weekends for myself. So I work about 45 minutes away from where I live, and my husband stays at home with the kids. So I have really been focusing on meal prepping on the weekends. So while I meal prep, I'll make big batches of food that the family will also eat. So I'll make something in the slow cooker, mostly a meat, couple meat dishes, and then I will prepare the additional food on the side. Mostly I buy bagged salads. There's a kale salad that I like that I buy. I buy a couple bags of those because I do all the work basically on the weekends, because during the week with my commute, the last thing I want to do is cook when I get home. So I do, like I said, large batch cooking on the weekends, and then also feed my family from that food. And I take my kids to the grocery store with me as well. The little ones are a lot easier to talk to about it than my 14-year-old. The little ones we've been focusing on what they're eating, and they're not the best eaters, to be honest. So they're pretty picky, but I make a big deal when they do eat something that is healthy for them, and really talk to them about, these chips that we have, let's maybe eat some cheese or maybe eat some bacon. They love bacon and cheese. They love eggs and fruit, but I just try to get them involved in the process. I've bought a couple cookbooks that were more focused on little kids because they're age, almost 5 and 3. So they're pretty little, but they do really like to help. So I'll try to make different kind of easy dishes. And I bought a book, Eat Like a Dinosaur, to try to get them excited. Sometimes they're excited, sometimes they're not. And my oldest is actually probably the best eater of the 4. When he was little, he really got into helping me cook, and he'd pretty much eat whatever I put in front of him. But with the 2 little ones, I found that even if they help me make something, they won't always try it, which is frustrating because that was always my strategy before, and it doesn't work great all the time. But I can't give up. I don't want to give up, and I'm hoping that eventually they'll realize, that they feel better when they eat better. And it's similar to my approach with my husband. I just try to be an example and try to talk to them about it and try to get them involved.
Yeah, the education piece is so important. I know that my mom, every time we made something or made our lunches, she was always explaining, with the information she had at the time. I mean, fat was bad back then. So she's like,
Yes.
margarine is better because blah, blah, blah. But, just like that really ingrained, maybe not the right things in my brain, but just I understood what I was eating and what it did to my body. And that was really cool for my mom to do that. So that's really interesting that you're doing that as well. And also the batch cooking too is so important. Like I know for me, It's the meat. I find the meat the most challenging piece because it takes forever to cook. And like you said, those side items like salad and stuff, that can be whipped up really quickly. Yeah. But throwing a big roast in the slow cooker and having it cook and then freezing it in portions, that goes a long way to your week. So that's really, really awesome. So you mentioned a little bit about picky eaters and just encouraging them with different types of foods and having foods in the house. So I wanted to point to that too. Now, would you say that you encourage your children to eat more keto? Like, do you have more keto foods in the house than you do like carby foods? And I know that we had a lot of moms ask, like, I eat keto and my kids seem to be interested in fat. Are other moms nervous about giving their kids too much fat? Are you nervous about that?
No, because they could probably eat more fat because there's still a good amount of carbs in the house. And with them being home, most of the time, and I'm at work, I don't have a ton of control over what they're eating here. So I feel like at this point, if I'm focusing on fat at dinner, that's probably going to balance out what they ate during the week. It's one of my goals this year. I really really want to get them more interested in eating better, because it just, I know what carbs, can do to the body, and they're growing and they need the fat for their brains. And I really want to make a difference there this year. So yeah, a lot of times at dinner, we'll have bacon, eggs, and cheese, and possibly some nut butters. So it's not, real exciting food that we're focusing on, but hopefully enough fat to balance out the other stuff they're eating.
Yeah, kind of like offset. I do the same thing with my husband. Like, I know that when he goes out with his buddies, he's drinking beer and having burgers, with fries and like all the things. But, when he's at home, I make the food, and usually I just make him what I have. But he always says, I need carbs with this. I need carbs with this. Yep. So I just like cook a little sweet potato, and I found these like little mini sweet potatoes. They're like the size of your palm. And then he gets a little bit of carbs, but it's not the momentous piece. And that's all you can really do. Is like, you can't really control what they're going to do outside the home without making them go crazy. But, you can, influence or encourage them to eat certain things when you're in the house. And I think we can get so overwhelmed. Like, I speak with some women that are like, this kid likes this thing, and this kid likes this thing, and my husband eats this way, and I eat that way. Like, how do I make it all work? So I really liked your tip on food prepping. And really, it comes down to protein. Like, usually the whole family will eat the same type of protein, and then it's just about adding extra things on there, would you say?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So that's exactly what I do. Is I focus on the protein on the weekends, and then add, a couple of sides. Everybody gets that because everybody likes that. And then if, my husband wants a roll or extra carbs, whatever, then that's kind of up to him. He'll break out the little Debbie box every once in a while, and I kind of give him a look, but I try not to be too overbearing about it, because he'll just react to that. And, he's an adult, he can make his decisions, but hopefully I'm, kind of getting through a little bit.
Yeah, baby steps. More on my interview with Katie Williams after this message from one of our podcast partners. I've always loved protein powder for its ease of use, but could never find one that made me feel good from the inside out until I found collagen. Not only is collagen a fabulous protein powder alternative, it actually helps strengthen bones and cartilage, improves resistance, elasticity, and mobility of joints and connective tissues regardless of one's age, and supports muscle rebuilding after an intense workout. There are a lot of collagen brands out there, but none as committed to quality and variety like Vital Proteins. I've created product bundles of Vital Proteins collagen, keeping in mind how I use collagen in my own home and when I'm out and about. I know you're going to love it as much as I do. Choose from Collagen Peptides Duo, Daily Essentials Combo, or a Collagen and Gelatin Starter Pack, and receive an instant 10% off when you purchase a bundle at vitalproteins.com/keto. Again, that's vitalproteins.com/keto for an instant 10% off these new Keto Diet Podcast approved collagen bundles. So how do you manage outside of the home? Like, do you have friends or family members outside of the home that totally judge you for your eating choices?
Yeah. So it's kind of across the board. So friends at work, most of the time I bring my lunch, but for example, today I have lunch plans with a friend at work, and most of the time I will, when we're talking about where we're going to go, I will make the suggestion. So for example, today I was chatting with my friend about where we were going to go, and I had suggested a place, like a burger place. And she's like, well, that's fine. And so I will look at the menu ahead of time. Most of the time, what the cool thing with keto to me is you can find anything anywhere. So, I'm thinking, okay, I'll get a cheeseburger with a lettuce bun instead of a bun. And I can't get the fries. And, I've been somewhat vocal with my friends, not real vocal about it, but they'll make comments, oh, you're having a salad, or, oh, you got a burger without a bun. I have found that they kind of feel guilty a little bit. And I have one friend especially that when we go out for lunch, I am very tempted to not eat healthy. We'll go to Jimmy John's and she'll get, chips and pop and sandwich with bread. And I've tried a couple times to stick with my way of eating, but I've just found when we go there, I just want to splurge. So I suggested we go somewhere else, like Panera, that I'm not going to be as tempted. I do have, part of my family that they will give me a hard time. They'll give me a hard time about the gluten-free thing. And sometimes I just laugh it off. But there's been a couple times that I've said, well, when I feel good and I'm not fat, and then I guess we'll see. And so, I can laugh it off, but it also is kind of upsetting, honestly, because it surprises me that people think that processed food is actually better, or that I'm the weird one. But I guess I can understand, since not a lot of other people eat this way, and they've seen me, try different things. And I think for me too, it's really important that I stick with it when I'm with them. Otherwise, it becomes even more of a reason for them to give me a hard time. If I say, oh, I'm not eating, as many carbohydrates, and then the next time they see me, I'm partaking in a big pizza, they're like, yeah, Katie's really serious about this, right? So it has been, I've definitely not been perfect, but I've really tried, especially the last 6 months have gone along, to just continue to work on it and just continue to really stick with this way of eating, so that I'm being consistent, and with how I feel about how others are eating, that I'm a good example. So, and I can only be a good example if I'm eating the way I need to eat when I'm with my friends and family.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points. Like, I know that with my sister, I find that when we're together, we really like eating like junk food. That's how we grew up, So it's very easy for us to get into that pattern. And both of us know that carbs don't make us feel good. So what we've decided is that we just don't have activities that surround food. So, instead of going out for dinner, we'll go to a ceramic class, or last week we did like a painting class. So we're always trying to come up with different ways to spend time together, but that it doesn't always have to be around food, because there are those people, I totally get what you're saying, or those places, like when you go, like when her and I go to any place that has candy, like any place, it doesn't even matter. We're loading up the candies before we even know what's happening. So it's just like when you're with that person and in that environment, it's just so easy to get back into those patterns, and to know that those patterns don't make you feel good and that you don't actually want to engage in those until, like, not to say like in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you'll probably be able to go to that place with that person and be like, no, I just don't feel like that. But when it's so fresh, sometimes it's just like quitting smoking. You can't be around a bunch of smokers, because you'll want one. You'll see them doing it. And even years, like it's been 9 years since I quit smoking. And still, when I see somebody smoking, just sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks really good right now. So like it takes time. And have you ever, like, I know when I was first getting going with keto and there were a lot of people judging me, I would kind of hide what I was eating in order to avoid judgment. Have you done that?
Maybe a little bit. What I've done more of is when we have a get together, especially with my family, I will bring dishes that are more keto. And I don't announce to them, that, oh, this is keto, because then they'll look at me and not want to try it. I did this especially at Thanksgiving, and where I brought a bunch of dishes that were gluten-free. I made a gluten-free stuffing, but I just said, this is the stuffing, and everybody ate it. Nobody said anything. So it was good. With the hiding, I don't know if I hide it, but at work, a lot of times I will need to heat up my food. So I'll bring a couple of fried eggs and, some bacon and some avocado, and I'll go and heat it up in the microwave, and I'll get some looks sometimes, or people, hey, you really like bacon. What's up with that? Aren't you afraid you're going to get a heart attack? And I just kind of like, no, it's, I eat a higher fat, low carb diet, and they're like, oh, okay. So, sometimes I'll kind of feel like, I don't want to, if I'm not really in the mood to have the conversation with somebody, I'll kind of, go and heat it up when nobody's around. But most of the time, people aren't really paying attention to what I'm eating. They're kind of caring more about themselves. But I need to, that's one thing that I've thought about too, is I want to have a better kind of elevator speech about it. So when people do ask me, I don't kind of get embarrassed or feel put on the spot. And it's enough to maybe spark an interest in people, because I've not really ever had anybody say, hey, can you tell me more about that? It's like, oh, okay, well, good for you.
Good for you. Yeah, totally. I have a very meticulously perfected elevator speech, but I need to change a little bit, because I always say I'm a nutritionist. And yesterday I got into a 3-hour conversation at the camera store about nutrition and diet. And I was like, what did I do? I have so many things to do, Yeah. But yeah, it's so cool when you can see that light bulb. Like, for example, the gentleman that I was speaking to had a diabetic wife. And when I said ketosis, he was like, blood, just like you.
Yes.
Like, no. And then when I explained it, he's like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more. So I think, when you see that light bulb switch off in people's heads, being so passionate about this, and yeah, it was a long conversation about nutrition, but a lot of people were listening, and that can be really cool to just get people engaged and get them thinking about the food that they're eating and what that impact has on their body. And that can be, that changes the game for so many people. So yeah, that elevator pitch is really nice to have. And also, like, not caring about what other people think. I think that was a big thing for me. The first time I went out for dinner with my family, it was breakfast, and all they had on the menu was bacon that I could eat. So I asked for 6 orders of bacon, because it was 2 strips each, and a thing of mayo. And I was like dipping the bacon in the mayo. And my family was like, oh my gosh, I'm really concerned, blah, blah, blah. And I knew that was going to be an issue. So I just came up with like 3 different studies that I had read and things that I was going to say. And I just said, here's kind of what I have to say to you. And if you're not okay with it, that's great. But I'd like you to keep your comments to yourself, because I'm doing this for my health. And it really depends on the type of people you're talking with, because sometimes you're right. They care more about themselves than they do about you. They're just like, why is that girl eating so much bacon? Okay, that's cool. Like, back to my life.
Really struggle with eating out in restaurants, just in general.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up where my mom cooked all the time. We lived kind of further out from town. We actually didn't have any place that delivered or anything to us. So our big treat for the week was going out to lunch after church. And I view going out to dinner or lunch as a treat. Therefore, I feel that I need to treat myself. So that's something that I've really tried to work on. And I'm, again, not perfect at it at all, especially when I'm with my husband. We don't get a lot of time to ourselves. So when we do get to go out to dinner by ourselves, I want to get a alcoholic beverage, which then I don't feel well. So I've really tried to focus on remembering how crappy I feel when I eat a bunch of tortilla chips or I drink a big margarita or whatever. And that has seemed to help. Sometimes I still will forget or conveniently forget that it's going to make me feel nasty, but slowly but surely kind of getting that way. But one thing you said too, with that kind of triggered a thought about the hiding, we'll go out for dinner especially more with my husband's family. And I won't, if someone's asking where we want to go, a lot of times I'll just say, wherever, it's usually someone's birthday, wherever that person wants to go. I can find something is what I'm thinking. But sometimes I don't like shouting my order across the table necessarily. So I'll kind of have the waiter come over closer to where I am just to kind of talk through the special needs that I might have for whatever I'm ordering. And then it just doesn't, introduce the opportunity for someone to start, picking on me a little bit about what I'm eating. So
that's brilliant. Yeah, I hate yelling my order across the table.
I do.
I can't even, like, I will wait. The waiter will be on the opposite side of the table and I'll just pretend like I don't know that he's waiting for me to say something until he comes over. Because it's such a personal thing, and I totally agree. And to, your point to after church going out and, that connection of just like it just being such a natural thing to just go out and eat, or, when you get a burger, you have to get fries, right? And it's just changing that pattern, and you really, really have to be patient with yourself. Like it takes time. It's just like, learning how to dance. You don't just all of a sudden, rock out like a pro. You got to take it slow and learn every step. And there's going to be fumbles along the way. It's so true. Yep. More on my interview with Katie Williams after this message from one of our podcast partners. Instant Pot, my personal favorite pressure cooker, is a partner of the podcast. With Instant Pot, you can make meals in minutes. Truly, I was someone who was intimidated by pressure cookers, but I'm so happy I gave Instant Pot a try. It makes rich bone broths, hearty stews, and epic dishes just like your slow cooker does, but a lot quicker. I have the Instant Pot IP Duo 60, which pressure cooks, slow cooks, cooks rice, sautés, makes yogurt, steams, and warms up food all in one. As an exclusive for Keto Diet Podcast listeners only, Instant Pot is offering everyone $50 off any Instant Pot of their choice. Simply go to instantpot.com, find the unit that best suits you, and use the coupon code KETO, that's all in caps, no spaces, for your $50 discount. How do you deal with fasting? Do you fast? Do you intermittent fast? And how do you handle that with your children? Do they ask you questions about like, Mommy, why aren't you eating? And how do you?
Yeah, I do actually. I have noticed that for whatever reason, I don't know, just my body just loves the fat, and I'm not nearly as hungry. And I will fast quite often on the weekends, and I'm just not hungry, and I feel really good. And I'm not currently checking my ketones. I've been looking into a ketone meter, but the prices of the strips are prohibitive to me. But I've been checking more my blood sugar, and just knowing what the signs are being in ketosis, I can tell, that I'm there, and then I'm just not hungry. And I don't know if anybody really notices. I'll make a comment, I'll not really eat much in the mornings, during the weekend. And then by the time, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock rolls around, I might make a comment like, I am hungry, and everybody else, a lot of times on the weekends, the family just kind of snacks. And so it's not really real obvious, I guess, to them that I haven't eaten, other than when I make a comment about, I haven't eaten since yesterday at 5. I'm getting a little hungry. I'm going to make some food for us to eat. And I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So, and in the mornings, I get up before I'm up and out the door to work before anybody here is awake. So a lot of times at work, I'll just be sipping, my coffee or some water or whatever, and people aren't really noticing too much. So
it's easier. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, makes it easier.
And so with this decision, you said in April 2016, you decided to kind of do this keto thing. What kind of state of mind have you had to keep yourself in during this process? Because it can be quite challenging. You're going up against a lot of different things. Kids need different things, and your husband needs a different thing, and you need a different thing. How have you stayed in a certain state of mind to be able to move forward? What has been your state of mind throughout this?
Yeah, 2016 really, when I reflect on it, has been pretty amazing, and more so because I really struggled up until April. I would say I struggled with emotional eating. So, if I had a good day, I deserved a treat when I got home, or a glass of wine, or I had a bad day, I deserve a glass of wine or a treat. 2016 was actually a very stressful year. We had just And actually around the time I started keto, we started just having some challenges. I live in an older home and it seemed like everything was breaking and they're expensive, and my ex-husband lost his job. And so we were, having to go to court for that. And just one thing after another, it seemed like throughout the entire year was really stressful. But I'm really proud to say that I was able to really focus on what I was eating and eating better and feeling better, and not just relying on exercising, because I tend to be a little bit of an over-exerciser. And what kept me really on point was listening to the different podcasts and listening to your podcast, Leanne. And I really just mentally feel great when I'm staying on track and just keeping focused on how happy that makes me feel to be eating well, and also be listening to what the community is talking about and trying different things. And it kind of became my little world of nutrition, and I just am so passionate about it and love it, and it makes me feel good. I really have been proud that I've been able to stay focused on it despite a lot of really stressful things. And, January was just continued to be extremely stressful. But I would say maybe, one time I was like, I wish I could just eat whatever I wanted to eat and feel good and just not have to worry about it anymore. But then I, listen to the podcast, I read the emails, I read the newsletters, and was like, no, I don't want to go backwards. I want to keep going forward in this and, continue to reach toward my goals and, feel really good, hopefully improve my memory, really battle that fatigue and the hypoglycemia and keep my insulin in check, because it is important. I don't want to have, problems in the future, and I need to stay focused. So I'm just focusing on that, and not wanting to go backwards, because I do really feel like I was fortunate enough to define the right path for me and for what makes me feel good, and just don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, that's really important. I love that staying focused and being inspired by other people's stories, and just, it's the same thing with anything, really just entrenching that belief into everything. And when you feel like you're kind of veering off, just like listening to more things and getting yourself refocused. And it sounds like you really have to put yourself as a priority. Like, you're a mom of 4 children. It just blows my mind not being a mother and having dogs. And I'm like, we're at the vet every week with our dogs. Like, I couldn't even imagine 4 children. Like, it's like a whole other level. And the power and determination that it takes to put yourself as a priority and realize that, if you're not healthy and you're not feeling your best, you can't be there for your family, period. So it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing and to put yourself as a priority every day, so kudos to you on that. That's a huge, huge deal. What are your favorite podcasts? Because you have 75 of them. So there's got to be some that stick out that maybe others should be listening to that are listening right now.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix between keto and paleo, most of it. So yours, Leanne, and 2 keto dudes. I like them. All of Jimmy Moore's podcasts, Living La Vida, low carb and low carb. Well, now the low carb conversations that he's transitioned to the other 2 health practitioners. And the fasting one with Dr. Fung, that one is interesting just because, with the fasting, I've like I said, have done the intermittent fasting, but it's something new for me to think about. Also really enjoy the Paleo Women, Balanced Bites podcast with Diane Sanfilippo, probably Fed and Fit. I also listen to Jillian Michaels. So sometimes I want to quit Jillian Michaels.
Yeah, totally.
But for some reason, I keep going back. But yeah, it kind of depends on my mood of the day. But I would say those are kind of my highlights.
Yeah, that's great. Totally. I really like the Charlene Johnson podcast as well. Yeah.
I am subscribed to those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently started a blog actually at the beginning of January, and I was listening to like the Charlene Johnson ones just with, the building a business and things like that. So that's kind of my dream to eventually possibly go back to school and get some type of a nutrition degree. That is not my profession now, so it's kind of a long-term dream, but I do occasionally listen to that. And also Diane Sanfilippo has a podcast, the Build a Badass Business, that I think she stopped a year ago, but I'm still trying to kind of listen to the previous ones that she had recorded. So,
and they got a lot of meat in them. There's a lot of stuff. Same with like Amy Porterfield. I can only listen to one of her podcasts a month because she gives so much information about business that it just like there's too much. Like I listen to one a month, I can't keep up. So, that's so good. Yeah, I'm obsessed with podcasts too. I always have them playing all the time. So that's good to know. And yeah, I wrote down a couple that I hadn't listened to. So thanks for that. And my last question, the resources that you use, you mentioned that you didn't have a lot of grocery stores and no Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. You mentioned that you ordered stuff on Amazon. Are there certain other stores that you like to order from, or different tools and tricks that you have for, living in a place where there isn't a lot of accessibility to keto foods?
Most of the time I do order through Amazon, but I have ordered through Thrive Market and probably need to do a better job of ordering through Thrive Market with just the deep discounts. But I have found that, my local, it's Kroger, and occasionally I'll see something pop up on the shelf and I'll do a happy dance. Like I literally do a happy dance in the middle of the aisle. They recently started carrying Tessame's salad dressing, and so excited. And it was like 2 for $4 or something. So I bought a whole bunch of them. But there's actually so I live in the Midwest. We have a lot of farmers markets, but they're just during May through September or October. But there is a new co-op store that's being built right now in the town that I work. And it's a co-op, so I want to buy a share of that co-op because then you can be part of the decisions of what they carry in the store. But from what I understand, they will be selling produce and I think meat from all the local farmers. I'm pretty excited about that. It's supposed to open in April. So I'm planning on that being my primary source of groceries here in the near future.
Brilliant. That is awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Katie. You shared some really great tips and tools for people, and I know that it's going to be super helpful for a lot of people listening, and especially women trying to juggle their families or men trying to juggle family life. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Leanne.
So the show notes and full transcript for today's episode can be found at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/E26. And the transcript is added to the post about 3 to 5 days following the initial air date of this episode. So enjoy that. And that does it for another episode of the Keto Diet Podcast. Thanks for listening in. You can follow me on Instagram by searching Healthful Pursuit, where you'll find daily keto eats and other fun things. And check out all of my keto supportive programs, bundles, guides, and other cool things over at healthfulpursuit.com/shop. And I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.